He does a really great job having a variety of small, medium, and large shapes. To me, Patrick Brown is the best blend of cartoony and comic booky out there. Framing circle, framing hair and color, main character. So gorgeous. In the time that I've been making the Illustrator React series, I've been predominantly covering comic book artists. But as someone who grew up in the age of the internet, I've personally found most of the artists that I love and obsess over on social media. And for me personally, that's usually finding them over Instagram. So in today's episode, I'm going to do an Illustrator React that I've actually been wanting to do for a really long time and cover some artists who I think are the coolest people I've ever started following on Instagram. And a large part of the reason I'm doing this now is because I want to shine a brighter light on some independent and freelance artists out there, because lots of them are losing out on chunks of their income right now because of comic conventions being cancelled. Those are events where a lot of freelance independent artists will sell work and make large chunks of their income. So if you end up really liking any of the artists in this episode, please go check out their Instagrams and their online stores and their Kickstarters that some of them have active. I'm linking all of that in the description below. They have so much cool work that you can buy online from them. You don't have to just buy stuff from them at events. There are so many things that blow my mind about Mel Milton's art, but the thing that stands out the most among everything is the incredible range of styles he can work in. He can do cartoony, he can do realistic, he can do super stylized, and he's a master of both traditional and digital art. His style varies so much that even though I've personally followed him for years and I have his first art book, there are still lots of times where I come across his work and I go, oh wow, this is great, who drew this? I mean this piece for instance, when I saw this, I actually thought this was done by Laufman, who I'll talk about later. But nope, lo and behold, it was MelMadeDooks. Lots and lots of artists spend a lot of their time early on trying to figure out their style, and usually that's one style. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I've personally just kind of recently feel like I found my style, and it feels incredible and I'm loving the art I make in that style, but because of how hard it is to find one style that you really like, that you can work with really well, it's that much more impressive when someone like Mel Milton comes along and figures out how to draw incredibly well in one style and then just keeps going and mastering a ton of different art styles. And you can probably tell by now that a lot of what he draws is female characters and a lot of female portraits and headshots. But I really love that while he is drawing a lot of very pretty women, he does so many different body types and ages. He really changes up the style of the face a lot. He messes around with a lot of different eye shapes, which is really nice. And I also love that for someone who's generally drawing a lot of very attractive women, most of the time he's not drawing them in ridiculous, over-sexualized poses. He looks like he's trying to make them look elegant or cool or focused. Also, I don't know how, but I didn't realize until making this that he actually has 2 art books available. I have the first one, but I'm definitely gonna have to order the second, which is available on his Big Cartel store, again, linked in the description, along with his Instagram. He even has a YouTube channel. All those are linked in the description. Go check them out because, as you can see, he's an absolutely incredible artist with a huge range. It'll be really hard not to get overly personal about this one, because Laufman has been by far one of my biggest influences for the last 5 years at least. But anyway, he's worked in video games, he's done projects for Marvel and Hasbro and I think DC and a bunch of other big companies, and he's got his own comic published by Boom Studios called Ruin World. Right here. It's a good one. He also has this long-running series that he posts on Instagram of chibi versions of pop culture characters, and they're so cool. Every time he makes a new one, I absolutely love it. They're really great. And finally, he actually has a Kickstarter active right now for his latest art book, Creations, and for his newest graphic novel, Bot 9. The cover of which I actually really want to talk about, because it would be really easy for me to not narrow my talking points and just rant about a ton of stuff I love in his work, but I think this Bot 9 cover encompasses a lot of what I really like about his stuff, and one thing specifically is how he does covers in general, and I think this is one of his best. because he's really great at composition, both in terms of the general layout of all of the objects in the image, but also from a color standpoint. See, this is a very exploratory cover where he obviously wants us to take in everything around because the environment is done so nicely. But also there is a main focal point with our main character here, and that is emphasized really nicely by the fact that there is this sort of yellow triangle built from the character's head, the fish inside the suit, and the car that the character's standing on. The only really saturated yellow in the piece is there along with the title. So once we start by focusing on our main character, we see that he's then looking up at these sharks. We look at the sharks, they kind of loop us around to the building, and that gives our eye a perfect excuse to kind of wander around the rest of the piece. And he's also done a really great job with the atmospheric perspective in this piece, which I was talking about in the last episode, where stuff farther away from you will look more faded out because of particles in the atmosphere and stuff like that. And that is even more prominent underwater because water is a lot thicker than air. So if we were looking at this scene in above water in a city or something, a lot of this stuff, it isn't far enough away that it would probably need to have a lot of atmospheric perspective in front of it. But underwater, it would really be thick in there from algae and stuff floating around in the water. And then of course we've got a really nice, sort of subtle because it's a bit blocked by the text, but framing within the frame of this arch going over the whole piece, kind of framing us more down into the important stuff in the image. It's such a gorgeous cover, I can't wait to read the book, and of course get his new art book, because I've got all his other art books. So again, linking his Kickstarter, there's only 3 days left at the time this video is going out. It has been funded by now, but you know, there's lots of stretch goals to it, so go check it out. His work is really cool. And I'm linking his online store and his Instagram and all that too. This is some of my favorite examples of stylized proportions and anatomy out there. It's wild and awesome and so exaggerated. The shapes on the body are so cool, and it's very unique to just Rob Duenas or Sketchcraft. His style is like a really cool blend of comic booky and cartoony, but for an artist who's got a bit of cartoony leanings in his art, he does a lot of pieces with tons of detail to them. If you take a look at this cover he did for the gaming magazine, you can see there is tons of details in below the characters with all of the sort of plushies and toys and game consoles. And he's done this style of cover a few times for a few different projects, and they're all really awesome looking. And what I really like about them is, well, it could easily become over-cluttered because there are so many little details and elements in below the characters. The way he keeps it from getting over-cluttered and having a main focus on our characters is by not putting much of the clutter around their heads specifically, and Goku's upper body here. And he's even got that big controller framing Goku's head nicely. And while there is some detail in the buttons, it's not nearly as extensive as the detailing going on lower in the piece. When you're doing stuff with lots and lots of detail, it's really important to have a good space of breathing room so that it's not just crazy detail everywhere. And Sketchcraft does a really awesome job of that here and in lots of his work. But while I really do love his covers and stuff like that, a lot of his stuff that I'm drawn to the most is actually his commissions of individual characters that he's done, just because my favorite thing about his work is his stylized anatomy. That is obviously a big personal bias. Some people aren't as big a fan of super stylized anatomy, but I think it's just the proportions are so wacky and cool and unique. It's really awesome stuff. And he's another artist who's great at both traditional and digital. And he's done some really cool, drippy stuff, I think, with his traditional artwork that's really interesting. Be sure to check out his Instagram. Again, linking his Instagram and his Etsy shop in the description. And his YouTube channel. He has a lot of really long live stream kind of videos of him drawing. Sweeney Boo does some of my absolute favorite examples of simple rendering done gorgeously. In her artwork, her style makes it look like the work is so effortless, even though it takes years to get to a point where you can make art this simple look this fantastic. She's an artist who's done work on Captain Marvel and Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and she's got her own comic called Eat and Love Yourself that was a Kickstarter in black and white, I believe, and is now being officially published by Boom Studios in full color. It's not coming out until April 21st, but I'll link pre-order links in the description. And well, again, this is another case where her professional work is really gorgeous, but I'm actually, again, more drawn to her commissions and stuff like her Inktober drawings. Because see, she frequently does an art trope that I really, really love, which is doing a black and white or grayscale drawing with one single color that just makes the whole piece pop out so nicely. And that's obviously not unique to just her. Lots of other artists do stuff like that. I know Laufman has done that a bunch as well, and his examples are great too, but I've never really talked about this art trope on here, and Sweeney Boo does some of my absolute favorite examples of this, so I thought now was as good a time as any. One of my favorite examples that she's done is this commission here of Poison Ivy, which has so much framing built into a drawing of just one character. And part of that is obviously the color for the hair. The hair is completely framing the main character, and her body and head stand out so nicely against the only bit of color in the piece, besides the little bit of color on the second framing device, this vine that's going all around the character, making a nice circle around her. Framing circle, framing hair and color, main character. So gorgeous. And her art is a great reminder of why you should never overlook how impressive simple rendering can be. To do art like this consistently really well with really nice simple anatomy, you have to learn all of the same stuff that people who are doing super detailed artwork have to learn. I tend to refer to it in my head as sort of deceptive simplicity. While the simple rendering and style make it look like it's easy to do, it's absolutely not. Once again, Sweeney Boo's Instagram, online store, and pre-order links for her new book, all in the description. If you like Venomized characters, you'll love a lot of Patrick Brown's most recent stuff. He's been doing a lot of work for Marvel on an upcoming Spider-Man event called Maximum Venom. So he's been venomizing tons of popular Marvel characters. And I think Venom and Venomized characters look incredible in his art style. To me, Patrick Brown is by far the best blend of cartoony and comic booky out there. His characters are often drawn in super dynamic poses with very exaggerated expressions. His rendering on his colors is gorgeous and stylized enough to stand out as his own work, while also being very widely generally appealing. It's the kind of art that works really well on comic covers or posters or promotional artwork, or even on mugs. And while his poses and expressions are really great, the coloring really is my favorite part of his work. And the way he does his coloring, which you can actually learn from him on his Skillshare courses, which I'll link in the description along with his Instagram and everything, is, while there is a little bit of painterly stuff in there and some really nice textures put in, the core of his shading and lighting is done with multiple layers of cell shading. And if you don't know, cell shading is the kind of shading and lighting that's generally done in animation and a lot of more cartoony kinds of work, where the shadows are represented by one solid line instead of being a bit faded, like is more realistic. So he uses that, which gives the piece a nice cartoony kind of feel, but doing the multiple layers of it makes the piece a lot more fleshed out and 3D than a lot of more cartoony stuff normally is. Anyone who's been watching this channel for a while and watching my drawing videos knows who Patrick Brown is because I reference him a lot. He was the main inspiration behind the Venomized videos I've done lately, which have been pretty popular, where I venomize My Hero Academia characters, and my subscribers' characters, and Doom Eternal demons, and a bunch of stuff like that. The characters that Jake Parker designs and draws are so creative and awesome. There are so many drawings of his that strike me as iconic, despite the fact that some of these characters he only draws once. Jumping straight to mind is a drawing he did of a TIE fighter samurai robot with a warrior standing on top of it, or his burger and fries robot. There's also a drawing he did of the comic character Invincible that I really love. And of course, the main character of his Skull Chaser series comes to mind as well. And most artists out there, even if you're not super familiar with Jake Parker's work specifically, you've probably heard his name because he's the guy who started Inktober, which is an annual art challenge that's been going for about 10 years now, where artists draw a different piece every day in the month of October based off of a prompt list. And you know, it's that art challenge that most artists go, yeah, I'm gonna do it this year, and then give up after 5 days. And that's not me judging. I've tried it many times and never actually succeeded in finishing it until last year when I did my Inktober in a Day videos on this channel, which Jake Parker actually commented on, and that blew my mind. That was so cool. But anyway, back to his actual artwork, because he does a lot of really incredible art. And one thing that he's probably most known for in his artwork is his mech and robot drawings, because those are just so cool, and they really show off how he does an awesome job of varying the proportions of his characters. He does this on his creature designs as well, but I think with the robots it's very apparent. He does a really great job having a variety of small, medium, and large shapes, which is a really important part of character designing. And these proportion and size variations also give his characters really nice silhouettes, which again, important in character design. Basically, I'm just saying he's a really great character designer. And something that really stands out about his robot and mech drawings is how he always thinks through how these robots would be able to move. He actually thinks about the mechanics so that the limbs actually look like they could move around properly and fluidly. He's basically giving realistic possibilities to the movements in characters that are generally kind of cartoony looking. The thought behind them really makes them stand out. And this process of designing robots and mechs that can move properly is something he actually teaches on SVS Learn, which is a great site started by him and Will Terry, where they have tons of different classes for learning to become a better artist. I took some of those classes years and years ago, and they were really helpful to me. So I'll link that in the description, along with his Instagram, and he also has a Kickstarter going right now too, for his 5th art book, which I'm really excited for the Kickstarter to end so I can actually get my copy. But again, linked in the description. So much cool artwork. I very frequently just go to his Instagram and browse through it all again, because there are so many cool characters in there. But anyway, that's all for this episode. There are lots of other artists I'd love to talk about. Choco Artist does some really incredible stuff on Instagram, but a lot of her work was a little bit too not safe for work to cover extensively in this episode. I really like Sean Dobbin's art. He does some really cool stylized head portraits of pop culture characters. I was gonna talk about Creature Box if I had more time, but definitely want to cover them in a future episode. And 2Hottie7 Art does some really awesome stuff. Basically, I'll link a bunch of other artists that if you like the artists covered in this episode, you'll probably like these other people as well. So, you know, check in the other artists category or whatever I call it in the description. And again, if there are other independent artists or freelance artists that you really love, I know this is a hard time for everyone, so if you don't have the spare income to do so, obviously don't buy some of their work, but if you do and you want to support them, just, you know, check out a bunch of your favorite artists' online stores or whatever they've got going on the internet. I'm sure they'd all really appreciate it. And, you know, if you want to support this channel, the best way to do that is to really just, you know, share this video if you know someone else that might like it. Maybe check out some of the other videos. As mentioned, I did videos where I venomize pop culture characters. I do a lot of drawing videos on here. I did my Inktober in a day videos. And of course, there's a whole series of Illustrator Reacts videos that are kind of like this one, but more frequently covering comic and manga artists. And of course, leaving a like always helps. But that's all for today. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Christian Pearson. This has been PopCross Studios, home of the nerdiest art videos on YouTube. Stay safe, everyone, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.